Thank you so much. Although I have to say, listening to Calvin play and sing kind of makes me think we should just scrap my story and just have another song. So I'm a Presbyterian minister from the tradition of Calvin, not Calvin Arsenia, but the other Calvin. Calvin had some pretty strong beliefs about community. One of the things he taught some other things that weren't so great actually, but on community, I'm a big fan of Calvin. He believed community, people coming together, is where we meet God, where we experience the divine. We don't have bishops in our tradition because we don't think the divine can be confined to one person. We have communion, but we don't think the divine is in the bread and the wine. We believe the divine is in the people who come around the communion table. Community is when people, all people, can come and be together. 25 years ago, I was in seminary, which, when I look back on it, was not a surprise to anybody. I was a church kid. It was where I had found my community. My family brought me there. I was baptized as a baby. It was where I first learned the Bible and learned about how you're supposed to act around people. I grew up there. I was a deacon when I was in high school. I was the preacher on Youth Sunday, so it was the place where I learned that you can use your gifts and talents, and people will actually listen to you, and sometimes I would even listen to them. I went off to college, got involved in a campus ministry on campus where, even though I had thought I was going into journalism, I ended up finding a lot more reward in the freshman Bible study I got to lead or the weekly groups I got to be an MC for. It started to feel like instead I should go to seminary, and I did. So 25 years ago, I was in seminary just about to enter the final stages of becoming a Presbyterian minister. The other thing that happened about 25 years ago, exactly 25 years ago this summer, is that the Presbyterian Church U.S.A. adopted a new paragraph to go into their church constitution. G60106B, if you're interested. G60106B said that among the requirements for ordination is fidelity in marriage between a man and a woman, or chastity, that's what it said, chastity in singleness. This was very inconvenient timing. Because the other thing I was coming to realize in those seminary years about 25 years ago is something that of course had been true all along and is true today, but which I had not been honest with myself about, or certainly anyone else, which was that I was gay. The church I was growing up in, for all of the ways it taught me about community, was not a safe space to be an LGBTQ person. It was a place that didn't have a lot of understanding or openness, where no one had ever come out loud and said that's who they were, and so I didn't even entertain the thought, frankly. It wasn't on my radar that I could be a Christian who was gay, growing up in that church, in that place. And I went off to college, a place where I was surrounded by affirming people, including affirming Christians, but not in the campus fellowship I was part of. And so all of that opportunity to lead and learn was in a context where I also never took advantage of the opportunity to tell the truth to myself and to others about who I was. And so now I was in seminary, about to be ordained, to answer a sense of calling, except that the church had just decided that that was not an option, if I was honest. And so I did what a lot of people do. I didn't think about it very much. I shoved it down as far as I could. And since I was, much to my dismay, not violating the policy about chastity in singleness, when I was ordained, I was ordained. In fact, I became a pastor of a church here in Kansas City in the Northland in 1999. And all was well for a good while. You're busy when you're a new pastor. I worked 70 hours a week. Dating in the closet was not really on my mind at first, but it was in time. And in 2003, when I met the person who is now my partner of 19 years, who lived a couple of hours away in Colombia, after we talked on the phone, after we met, after we started spending weekends, well, weekends that ended at Saturday night, the preacher's weekend ends at Saturday night. After a while, it became clear this was going to last. Decisions had to be made. So here's where the decisions played out for us. The church I was serving was growing. Good things were happening. We had just called an associate pastor to work with me. We were building a building expansion. It was going to be a big deal, no matter what I decided. Should we come out? Should we just drop that truth bomb on the congregation, let the chips fall where they may, see what happens? It was possible. There would have been a lot of people to support me, but I knew it also would have caused a lot of division. It wouldn't have been unanimous. There would have been conflict. It would have been painful, even including for some people I really cared about. That didn't seem like the right thing to do. We could have just walked away quietly. We could have said, I'm going to do something else. But they didn't do something wrong. God, in my way of understanding, was doing good things in that place. That didn't seem faithful either. It's been pointed out to me when I've told people this story that there was another option. I could have broken up with my partner and called it off and gone back to that effort at the chastity and singleness thing. But that didn't seem faithful to who I was either. And so what we ended up doing for the next 9 years was serving in the closet, in that place. It wasn't totally in the closet. My partner had been out. In fact, he'd been the advisor to the student group, the LGBTQ student group at Mizzou. He was very not out, but took a step back into the closet to be with me. Friends knew, some colleagues, but maybe you know, I'm sure many of you know, that when you're not completely out, you're not out. Because there are all these people you have to say to, thanks for loving me, thanks for being my friend, by the way, you can't say this. It was a very difficult situation for sure. In 2012, the organization that I now lead, the Covenant Network of Presbyterians, was celebrating a success. The denomination had just changed its policy. They deleted G60106B. The Presbyterian Church now welcomes LGBTQ people. And that organization was entering a new season of its life to try to help the church live into those changes. And because I knew a lot of folks around the church, and a lot of people did know my story by that time, they invited me and eventually hired me to be the first openly queer LGBTQ executive director of that organization. That group gave me the occasion to write a letter to the church I was serving as pastor. A letter that said both, after 13 years I'm leaving, and, by the way, I'm gay. Now, I was there for 6 more weeks after I sent that letter. 6 weeks when Troy, my partner, came every week to church with me. They already knew Troy, by the way. Troy had started showing up a few years before as a friend of mine. A friend who very frequently built the sets for Vacation Bible School, and also when I was directing the handbell choir, decided to join because I really needed another person to play those low bells. Troy was so afraid that he would out me accidentally at handbell choir rehearsal that he decided on the first rehearsal night that he would call everybody there, all of the little old ladies in the handbell choir, he would call them honey. Just in case he accidentally called me honey during a rehearsal. So Troy and I, for those last 6 weeks, were able to go to church together and be honest and authentic about who we were. I had a lot of hard conversations in those last 6 weeks with the saints of Parkville. The hardest conversations, believe it or not, were not with the more conservative folks in the church, the folks who would have had a problem with having a gay pastor. Those conversations I know how to have. The hardest conversations were with the people who would have stood with me and been completely supportive, but who I didn't tell. honestly, people whose love for me was great, who said to me, "You sat with my mother by her bedside as she was dying. You did our premarital counseling. You baptized our child. How could you not share this most important part of who you are?" And that's when it hit me that real community, the kind of community that my church has always taught is the place where you meet God, is not just about being together. It's about being authentically together. That's informed the work I've done these last 10 years because, and we could talk for another hour about this, as much as our policies now allow for people to be out and serving, in practice, we have a long way to go. But everywhere I go, the one truth that resonates in every congregation, in every conversation, is that we are stronger when we are authentic with each other, when we can tell the truth, when we can be who we are, when we can live out our story. That is community. That is what I want for the church, and it's what I want for our world. When each of us commits to being authentic with one another, we are creating the community. And I think it's where we'll also find the divine.